evening, everyone. My name is Ramat Alade. I am your host for another edition of the City of Knowledge Academy Parenting Webcast. We hope you have enjoyed the previous editions of the webcast. Tonight promises another interesting package. I am not alone on this platform. I have my co-host Enoch Kolade with me. Enoch, you're welcome.
Thank you, Ramat. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. And on behalf of the Board of Trustees, Management, Staff, and Students of City of Knowledge Academy, I welcome you all to this edition of the Parenting Webcast. Our topic for today is Emotional Intelligence Expert.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ramat Alade. I am your host for another edition of the City of Knowledge Academy Parenting Webcast. We hope you have enjoyed the previous editions of the webcast. Tonight promises another interesting package. I am not alone on this platform. I have my co-host Enoch Kolade with me. Enoch, you're welcome.
Thank you, Ramat. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. And on behalf of the Board of Trustees, Management, Staff, and Students of City of Knowledge Academy, I welcome you all to this edition of the Parenting Webcast. Our topic for today is emotional intelligence for families, and our guest speaker is an emotional intelligence expert and learning and development professional, Mr. Kuro John Ngobo. We believe all our concerns on the topic will be discussed and trashed on the platform this evening.
Thank you, Enoch. People with high emotional intelligence often go on to be more successful in life than people with low emotional intelligence. High emotional intelligence helps individuals to communicate better, reduce their anxiety and stress, diffuse conflicts, improve relationships, empathize with others, and effectively overcome life's challenges. Our emotional intelligence affects the quality of our lives because it influences our behavior and relationships. Emotional intelligence is important because it enables us to live our lives with intention, purpose, and autonomy. Today, our guests will do justice to that. So if you have questions and comments on the topic, please drop them on the comment section for the guests. We will definitely take it. And if you have questions about City of Knowledge Academy, also feel free to drop them as well. Enoch and I are here to give all the answers. Let me use this opportunity to welcome some of the people that have joined us on our webcast today. I can see what Adekombi. He said, "Good evening, Ramat and Enoch. Good evening to you too. Thank you." Esther Kolade, good evening, Ramat and Enoch. Good evening to you too. Patrick Fayomi, good evening, guys. Wishing you all the best. CKA always on the match. Thank you, sir. Abiola Lamikora, our dear HOS. Good evening, Ramat and Enoch. Good evening to you, ma. Okusoya Adeyemi, another talk show from City of Knowledge Academy, CKA. Good thinking, good product. Thank you very much for that, sir. Femi Patrick Oyedoyin, well done, Ramat and Enoch. Thank you very much, sir. All right, Enoch, let's have the profile of our guest before we invite him in.
Okay. Mr. Kuro had a bachelor's degree in geography. He also had a master's degree in managerial psychology and a master's degree in entrepreneurship. Mr. Kuro's work experience spans the four top banks in Nigeria: Standard Chartered Bank, Guaranty Trust Bank, Access Bank, and United Bank of Africa. For 15 years, where he managed large numbers of personnel and retired as a senior manager. He also served as chief operating officer in two other firms before he began training fully. Mr. Kuro wrote the Emotional Intelligence Manual for 1 million teachers. You can read more about that on www.1millionteachers.com, a social enterprise based in Canada and affiliated to the Queen's University, Canada. He is on the faculty of several training organizations, including Purple Training and Consulting, Knowledge and Resource Center, Nigerian Army Resource Center, Flame Academy and Consulting, CIBN, and Riemann. He has also trained on emotional intelligence at Chevron Cooperatives, Dangote Group, First Bank of Nigeria plc, Fidelity Bank plc, and Lotte Governing Council. He is a regular feature on several platforms as an expert on emotional intelligence. Mr. Kuro has also facilitated open training for several groups and individuals and trains both in classrooms and online. He analyzes training needs, develops training content, facilitates training, and also conducts assessments pre and post training. He has trained well over 1,000 participants in emotional intelligence. Join me as I welcome our guest for today, Mr. Kuro John Ngobo.
Hello, good evening, everyone. And hello, Ramat and Enoch, my friends. How are you doing?
Oh, fine. Thank you,
Fine,
sir.
thank you, sir.
Great.
Mr. Kuro John Ungogo, you are welcome to the City of Knowledge Academy Parenting Webcast. All right, let us get to our
Thank you very much.
discussion. Let's begin this way, sir. How would you
Okay.
describe emotions and where do they live?
Okay, great question. Thanks, Ramat, for that. I hope my sound is clear enough. Emotions, to a large extent, can be described as the feelings that a human being has. Emotions are feelings, and the question of where do they reside, I would like to talk about a little bit of biology, just a little bit. Every human being's body is made up of cells. Individual cells come together to form tissues. A group of tissues together come together to form an organ, and we have different organs in the body, like the brain, the heart, the lungs, the liver. And then when those group of organs come together, they form a system, like the digestive system, that has different organs involved in it. Now, the most important organ in the human body is the brain, which is, to me, the headquarters of anybody's body, rather, because all the information you take into your body goes to your head, gets processed, and then we interpret and act based on that. The mind is not an organ. The mind is actually a part of the brain, where all our intelligence, our experience, our imagination, and our emotions sit. So the mind is really where emotion sits in our body. It's not an organ on its own, but it's a part of the brain where all of these things collect and they form our knowledge, our beliefs, and all of those things. So that's what emotions are. Emotions are feelings, and they sit in your mind, which is a part of your brain.
Thank you, sir. More comments are coming through. I can see Femi Patrick Oyedoyin. He says, "Well done, Ramat and Enoch." Ilaria Yo Temitokpe. She says, "Well done, Enoch Kolade." Thank you. Please keep the comments coming. We promise to read all of them. All right, Mr. Kuro. Now let's
Yes.
discuss factors that determine or regulate our emotions.
Okay, what are the factors that regulate or determine our emotions? I'll tell you a story of how your emotions play out in your body. So, for instance, Enoch and I are having a conversation, and I say something to Enoch, right? The message goes through Enoch's ears and goes through his central nervous system first to his survival brain, like the first level of the brain. It comes in from beneath and goes all the way up. So it goes to survival brain first, and the questions, is this a life or death situation, begin to play out in his brain. If it's not a life or death situation, that same message will go all the way to his to his emotional brain, where there's a small object called the amygdala. Essentially, it's like a small bean-like object where all our emotions sit: sadness, happiness, joy, fear, all of those things sit in our amygdala. And then it triggers an emotion, right? That same message, either immediately or it takes some time, goes to our thinking brain, which is all the way at the top. So what triggers an emotion in people essentially is what happens around us, because our bodies have five senses: the sense of sight, the sense of smell, sense of taste, which the organ is the tongue, the sense of hearing, and then the sense of feeling or touch, which is our entire skin cover. So when something happens outside of you, like I said something to Enoch, the message goes through one of your senses and goes to your brain and then triggers an emotion. So external or internal factors in your body will trigger an emotion in us. What regulates emotions is really up to us. There's some part of it that is biological, but a lot of it has to do with us as people. Over time, your experiences and the current circumstances will determine what emotion is triggered. So if the last time I shouted at Enoch, something pleasant happened to him, when I shout at Enoch again, his brain will most likely trigger a positive emotion, thinking something pleasant is about to happen, and vice versa.
Thank you very much for your response, sir.
You're welcome.
Let me take this time to read some more comments.
Okay.
Uwadok Ubong says, "Well done, Ramat and Enoch. Thank you very much for your comment." Mr. Kende Adeyemi says, "Great job, guys. Thank you very much for your comment, sir." And Mr. Kusonya Adeyemi says, "Good evening, Mr. Kuru." And he asks a question: Is emotional intelligence genetic or learned? We will take into that after the topic.
Okay.
Mr. Kuru, I would like to ask another question. Let's go into emotional intelligence properly. What is
Okay.
emotional intelligence? And can emotional intelligence be taught? If so, to what extent?
So what is emotional intelligence, and can it be learned or can it be taught? Emotional intelligence has been defined by many people, but I'll use a definition that makes it easy and was used by someone who made emotional intelligence popular. Emotional intelligence is first the ability to recognize your own emotions. So when something happens to you and you have a feeling, can you tell what feeling it is? Is it the feeling of anger or frustration? And sometimes the emotions sound similar, but anger and frustration are not the same. Anger is when something happens now that we're not comfortable with, we don't like it. It's upsetting to us, could lead to anger or could trigger anger. But frustration is you're doing the same thing over and over again and you're not getting the results. Like you write the same exams over and over again and you get frustrated. So emotional intelligence, back to the definition, is first the ability to recognize your own emotions and then be able to control them or manage them, and then be able to recognize the emotions of other people and be able to influence those emotions. So first, if something happens to me now, the first, I may have anger triggered in me, but the decision to display the anger is up to me. And I must learn to be able to manage emotions. And a lot of times people don't manage their emotions well and things go wrong. They walk out of a job. I can't do this anymore. They walk away from a relationship. They walk away from friends. You tell your friends, I don't want to be your friend anymore. You guys start speaking to one another. Emotions lead to that. So that defines what emotions are essentially. Or rather, emotional intelligence, the ability to recognize and manage your own emotions. Is emotional intelligence learned, or can you learn it, or can it be taught? The truth is this: in psychology, which is something I did a master's in once, there's always this conversation, nature or nurture. Do people get born in a particular way, or does nature, or does the environment teach them to become that way? Truth is, with emotional intelligence, it is more of nurture, more of your environment, more of how you grow and the people you live with and what you learn around you than how you are born. Oh, I get angry easily. It's something you can unlearn, and you can get learning from going to attend a training program about emotional intelligence, reading up about it. Attending a session like this could be a great start to just knowing that you can control all of this. So it's more of nurture, more of your environment than you were born with it. And the truth is, people can learn it. As the case may be.
Okay, thank you, sir. Comments from the audience. I can see Okusoya Adeyemi. He asked the question, how do I know which model of emotional intelligence to use? We'll definitely take all your questions later. Sylvester Uruna says, well done, Mr. Kuro. Emotion lives in our minds. Wow. Please keep the comments coming.
Awesome. Enoch and Ramat, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I can hear you.
Okay.
Is emotional.
Please keep the comments coming. Mr. Kuru, I would like to ask a question.
Okay.
Sir, there are these 5 areas of emotional intelligence. What are they, and what are they all about? Would you like to shed some more light on that?
Yes, very intelligent question, Enoch. There are 5 areas of emotional intelligence. Essentially, what they speak to is the fact that there are 5 aspects of emotional intelligence that you should imbibe, understand, and learn to use as you go along, because that's what speaks to somebody being emotionally intelligent. So, or emotionally intelligent. So let me pick all 5 of them one by one, and I'll try and break them down in very simple terms. There are 5 areas. The first area is self-awareness. As an emotionally intelligent person, you must know yourself. You have to know who you are, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what your likes and dislikes are. And that's something that has to be clear to you all the time. Why do you need to be self-aware? You cannot claim to be emotionally intelligent when you can't even recognize your emotions. And to recognize your emotions, you must know what they are, and you must also know what triggers them. So somebody could tell you, for instance, that, oh, every time I see a particular animal, it triggers fear in me. Every time I see a particular plant, it triggers anger in me. Every time somebody says this to me, you need to know yourself first. And in knowing yourself, you must know what your strengths and your weaknesses are. Why is that important? If you know your strengths, then you know what you can do very well and with ease. If you know your weaknesses, you should get people who have your weaknesses as their strengths and partner with them. So assuming I have a school project, and in my group, the group was supposed to have a project going on together, or we're supposed to work on the project together. I happen to be someone who's very good with numbers, and I like math a lot, but I'm not someone who's good at writing reports. And at the end of the project, we must write a report. If I want to pick team members, I should find somebody who's great with writing reports. So when I do the math and the person does the report writing, our teamwork comes out better. It comes with knowing who you are. So first, know yourself. Very, very important. The second area of emotional intelligence is self-regulation. To regulate something is to make is to bring it to a level where you want it to be. So for instance, there are many things created by man that regulate temperature. There's your air conditioning that can make your rooms colder, or there's microwave ovens, there are many things that can make temperature get hotter or colder. Any human being must know what regulates their own emotions. So if, for instance, I get very angry, I must know what I can do to make myself calm down. It's very important to note that everybody must know how to regulate one another. Otherwise, how can you claim to be emotionally intelligent when you get angry and you can't stop being angry? You can't snap out of being angry. And I give you a simple example every kid here would understand. I'm a kid at heart, so I still play PlayStation. I have a PlayStation 3 console in my house. And this is how I use PlayStation to regulate my own emotions. I assume that this bottle is filled with a particular negative emotion like anger, because someone did something that triggered anger in me and I chose to hold on to it. If I want to displace the anger in this bottle, I will go and play PlayStation 3. I'll pick a team. I'll pick another team, like Brazil will be the computer's team and I will be Togo. Or I'll pick Real Madrid and maybe Enyimba. If a team you don't assume would win the competition, then I pick the easiest model or the easiest level to play. Every time I score a goal against Brazil, it will trigger an emotion of satisfaction. And I'm just being animated here. That emotion of satisfaction will come into this bottle, displace a bit of the anger, and replace that bit of the anger with satisfaction. And that keeps going on and on until I can replace my anger with satisfaction by beating Brazil by 6 goals or something. That's how I use gaming or video games to regulate my own emotions. Sometimes I use music. You must know which one works for you as a person. So point number 1, self-awareness. Number 2, self-regulation. Number 3, self-motivation. A motivation is what makes you do or what drives you to do what you do. So as parents, we are motivated to work because of so many things, including school fees for our kids, feeding them at home, all of those things. You are in school and you are motivated to do well because you want to come out with great grades and move to the best college or university in the world. Now, everybody or most people think that motivation comes from outside of you. It should come from within you. So I set goals all the time so that those goals will motivate me to work. When I joined banking, I set a goal to be a manager in 10 years, and that motivated me to work. When I got to University of Ibadan, I wanted to come out with a second-class upper and nothing less, and that motivated me. So set goals as a way of motivating yourself. Point number 3, self-motivation. The 4th point, real quick, is empathy. Most people are familiar with sympathy. So if somebody is crying, like my child is crying, I'm saying, oh, sorry. That's me showing sympathy. Like, I want you to come out of a sad space or a bad place. Empathy is a little different. Empathy is me assuming if I were you, what would I want someone to do for me? Or how would I want someone to react to me? So if a little child lost a doll in the house, I would first of all think like a parent, how would I want to be addressed? I would want somebody to tell me, sorry, don't worry, we'll find the doll together, and go around the whole house looking for the doll if we consider it important to you. So empathy is you thinking like, what if I was this other person? What reaction would I expect? Number 4, empathy. And then there's 5, which is the 5th one, is social skills. No man is an island. No matter what you do in life, you will need people. So it's important to have relationships and keep those relationships well. And that's the 5th one. So I'll go back to all 5 of them again. First, you need to be self-aware, know who you are. Second, you need self-regulation, know how to regulate your emotions. You need self-motivation, know how to drive yourself to continue to do what you do. Empathy, be able to think for the other person or like the other person. And then number 5 is having social skills. How do those things help you to become more emotionally intelligent? If you get all 5 of them working at the same time with you, you'll be able to take better decisions and act in the best of ways. I'll give you a quick Lagos example about managing your emotions. Many times we're driving on Lagos roads and then somebody drives recklessly past us, and then we get very upset. It triggers an emotion of anger, but why stay angry and be screaming at somebody who's driven past you 20 minutes ago and you're still angry and yelling? Find a way to deal with it. You must have a self-regulating mechanism to do that. So those are the 5 areas of emotional intelligence, like you asked, Enoch. Thank you very much for that question.
Okay, thank you very much for that, sir. We will quickly go for a commercial break. Stay tuned. We will be right back.
Okay, this is my phone.
Welcome back. Our guest, Mr. Kuro, is still in the house, and our topic remains emotional intelligence for families. Okay, all right, Dr. Kuro. Do you think emotional intelligence is innate or acquired?
Okay, thank you, Ramat. I am aspiring to become a doctor, but I'm not there yet. Is emotional intelligence acquired or innate? Meaning, is it something you are born with or you learn over time? Like I said earlier, emotional intelligence is more of what you learn than what you are born with. But there are certain things that may taint your or tilt your the way you manage your emotions that are born with you. For instance, some people get very quick adrenaline rushes. They get the rush to do more and to pursue and all of that from their biology. But most of emotional intelligence is from without or from outside of you and from your environment. Case in point, I know in this part of the world, in Nigeria, where I live right now, it is said, it's a general perception that people from a particular state called Ekiti are stubborn. It's a perception. Remember that. And I think it's a stereotype. But let me explain how it influences a child who's an indigenous of Ekiti state. The child gets born not knowing what black or white is, what race is, what color is, until they grow. As they grow, they constantly hear that message going on around them. Ekiti people are stubborn. Ekiti people are stubborn. And then without meaning to, the child will begin to act in certain ways that we would consider stubborn. Even if the child is not stubborn, certain things will happen. We'll say, oh, they said it. Kowe is from Ekiti. They are stubborn. That's what he's doing. And over time, we'll begin to live like that. It's more in the environment than something we are born with. So parents need to know that and keep that in mind as they have kids around them. Kids model them or model us a lot. And a lot of times, a lot of the way they manage their emotions comes from how we relate with kids as a whole. So that's the answer to the question. Is it innate or is it inborn or is it something you learn over time? Most of it is learned
Okay.
rather than born.
Okay,
Yes.
Thank you very much for that, sir. More comments
You're
are
welcome.
coming through. More comments are coming through. Esther Kolade says, it's great to know we have power about our emotions. Thank you, sir. Femi Patrick Oyedoyin says, emotional intelligence helps you build stronger relationships, succeed at school and work, and
Yes.
achieve your career and personal goals. It can also help you to connect with your feelings, turn intention into action, and make informed decisions about what matters most to you. Thank you very much
Very
for
true.
that, sir. Temitope says, well done, CKA, for this program. Thank you very much. Udwa Ubong says, yeah, our environment actually affects our emotional intelligence. Well said, Mr. Kuro. Thank you.
Great.
Femi Patrick Oyedoyin says, brilliant contribution, sir. Well done. Please, is there any difference? And he asked the question, please, is there any difference between emotional intelligence and emotional quotient? We will definitely
Okay,
take that
Ramat.
question later.
Question later. Okay.
Abiola Lamikora says, so emotional intelligence is important and enhances the success of teams. An emotional intelligent person will be a good team member. Thank you very much,
Great.
Ma. Sylvester Uguna says self-awareness, self-regulation, self-motivation, empathy, and social skills. Thank you, sir. Thank you all for your comments. Okay, sir, How do you think we can develop our emotional intelligence skills?
Hmm.
Mr. Kuro?
I'm sorry, Ramat. I didn't hear that question. Could you please take that again?
Okay, sir. How do you think we can develop our emotional intelligence skills?
Okay, great. How can we develop our emotional intelligence skills? I made a mental note earlier on, and I'll just speak to that. I think there are certain things that need to happen. First, people need to be aware that your emotions are within your control. And that's the very first part. You need to be first aware that your emotions are within your control. You may not be able to control at first what emotion gets triggered when something happens, but your response to it is totally within your control. And there's something someone said once. He said, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you deal with it, which means most of what happens, most of what we do and what we say is within our control. It's only 10% what happens to us. So as human beings, I think the truth is, first of all, identify the fact that you can manage your emotions and you have control over them. That's the first thing. The second thing I think people need to learn and to understand in building your emotional intelligence is you have to learn to observe and to listen. To learn to observe and to listen. Like I mentioned in the story of the journey, your feelings go to, or your messages going to your brain goes to earlier. I said something to Enoch, or maybe I pushed Enoch, and Enoch banged his hand against the wall. The pain from Enoch's hand will go to Enoch's brain the same way any other information will go to his brain. So the pain goes to his skin, to his brain. It goes to his survival brain first and says, this is not a life and death situation. And then it goes up to his emotional brain, triggers an emotion, and then goes to his thinking brain. Now, here's the truth. Irrespective of the emotion that gets triggered in Enoch's brain, Enoch still has control over what he does next. Does he try to push me back? Knowing that I'm 6 feet tall, and he's probably, how tall are you, Enoch? I don't know, 3'7", 3'8", I don't know. But Enoch clearly is not as big as I am. If Enoch would just allow his emotions to cool down a bit and allow the message go to his thinking brain, his brain will tell him, Enoch, Mr. Kuro is not your size. He's probably going to do something very worse than just pushing you. And then he will change his reaction. If somebody is getting robbed, for instance, you choose the reaction knowing that the other person is holding a gun. So first off is understand that you need to learn about your emotions and manage it. Number two is to learn to listen. Okay, let me go back a bit. In understanding that you need to learn to manage your emotions, the first real thing to do is to know yourself. If you don't know yourself, you don't even know simple things like, do I like pepper? And if you can't tell if you like pepper or not, they will give you food that's very spicy. You're going to eat the food believing that it's okay with you, but it's going to upset your tummy. So in the first part, while you are understanding your emotions, first know yourself. Secondly, learn to listen and observe. Every time something happens to us and we react emotionally, later on, our thinking will come into it. Why did I act this way? Why did I react this way? Was this the best way to go about this? So after you've gone about knowing yourself and listening and observing, you then get to the point where you begin to learn from experience. Over time, you begin to learn from experience. Have the two of you seen Lion King, by the way? Lion King, there's the movie and then there's the cartoon. Sorry, I like movies a lot. Enoch, have you seen Lion King?
I've seen it before.
Okay, awesome. Robert says yes too. In the original cartoon of Lion King, there was the part where Rafiki used a stick to hit Simba's head. And Simba asked him, why did you hit me with the stick? And Rafiki told him, it doesn't matter, it's in the past. Because that's what Simba told him earlier. But you see, the next time he swung the stick, Simba ducked and the stick missed him. And that was the lesson. When something happens once and you have an experience of it, it teaches you what to do next. So here are the 3 steps for me to learn to improve your emotional intelligence. 1, know yourself. Start with knowing yourself and knowing that you need to improve your emotions or your responses based on your emotions. 2, learn to listen and observe. You will see what kind of behavior is right, what kind of behavior is wrong, what is acceptable, what is not. And then number 3, when something happens to you, learn from the experience. Ramat, can I quickly answer the question about EI versus EQ? Somebody asked before. Can I answer that question quickly?
Yes, sir. Yes. Yes.
Great. So somebody asked, what is the difference between EI and EQ? EI is emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is not an act, it's a process. It's something you go through and you live every day. EQ, however, is emotional quotient. Now, a quotient is a measure of a score when you write a test. So, for instance, an IQ test, an intelligence quotient test, is a test to test your intelligence. How quickly can you remember and recall things? How quickly can you make associations with two things? 2 plus 2 is 4, so 6 plus 6 is 12. When you write an IQ test, you get a score called an IQ score, an intelligence quotient score. When you write an emotional intelligence test, you get an EQ score, an emotional quotient score. And the higher the score, the more emotionally intelligent you are. So that's the difference between the two. People use them interchangeably, though, but that's what the two of them mean.
Thank
Thank you
you
for
very
that
much for your
opportunity, Amat.
response, sir. Thank you for your
You're
response,
welcome.
sir. Is
Yeah.
recognizing the opinion is recognizing the opinion of a child a proof or a challenge to emotional intelligence?
First, who's a child? I think that's something we should look at and talk about real quick. A child is someone, well, according to the National Welfare Bill or something that was written sometime in the past, in Nigeria, a child is somebody that is 12 and below, even though there's a plan to revisit that and take the age of a child to 18. But anybody that requires support and care is a child as far as age is concerned. Now, the question you asked is, giving a child the opportunity to express themselves, does it help emotional intelligence or does it make you less emotional intelligent? The truth is, it helps you to be more emotionally intelligent to give a child an opportunity to express themselves, including expressing their emotions. Sometimes we parents think we know everything for our kids, and it's not entirely true. The world we lived in as kids is completely different from the world we live in now. Our kids probably would not have the opportunity of doing what you're doing. Or when we were kids, rather, we probably don't have this opportunity. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, I give this analogy to people to explain to them why other people's perspectives matter, whether kids or adults. While I am here speaking to everyone watching, especially the two of you, my great hosts, Enoch and Ramat, I can see everything else in the world and everybody else in the world except me. My eyes are forward facing, so everything from this angle forward I can see, but I can't see myself, which implies that you cannot see yourself and you cannot see every perspective there is to something. And sometimes a child's perspective is one we should pay attention to. Now, when a child gives an opinion, it is still the parent's prerogative to accept the opinion or not. But you are more emotionally intelligent if you learn to give your child a chance to express themselves. If they can't express themselves to you, they will do that to other people. And trust me, you don't want to know the outcome of that, where they have to get that kind of feedback from people on the outside when you are there for them. So you are more emotionally intelligent as a patient, as a parent rather, if you give children a chance to express themselves.
Thank you very much for your response, sir.
You're welcome.
Mi- Mr. Mr. Hikam, Mr. Hikama Alade says, keep it up, CKA students. Mr. Inovosa Stephen says, well done, Ramatan Enoch. Thank you very much, sir. And Mr. Edwin Bankole says, well done, students. Thank you very much, sir. And Ms. Esakolade says, well done, Ramatan Enoch. Thank you very much, ma'am. Mr. Bankole asked the question, is there a correlation between emotional intelligence and students' performance? Mr. Kuro, would you like to answer that?
Yes, there is. There's a very high correlation or relationship, let me put it that way, between emotional intelligence and students' performance. From the student, and I'm not talking of the student's perspective alone, both from the student's perspective and also from the teachers and the parents' perspective. First, the student. An emotionally intelligent student can manage his emotions better. So if he writes a test and does not pass the test, he does not hold on to the emotion of dissatisfaction such that he cannot read for the next test. And sometimes emotions are so powerful, they can prevent your thinking brain from working. Some people get so angry they cannot work. They cannot do anything productive. You have to be emotionally intelligent to learn that, yes, sometimes the emotion gets triggered, whether you want it or not, but you can deal with it. So emotional intelligence is important with kids. Sometimes also, if you are emotionally intelligent as a child, you know what your weakness is. So you're not good in math. There's someone in your, so first you know yourself, which is self-awareness. Talk to teach you math. That process of going to find someone else to teach you math in your class is social skills, and it's also part of emotional intelligence. Just them that I am the boss, I know everything. And sometimes, like I just told parents, teachers, you don't know everything. The kids, a high level of emotional intelligence. And of course, I've mentioned parents before. A highly emotionally intelligent or a high emotional intelligence kid. Enoch, did you hear my answer to that question? The question from Mr.
Mm,
Edwin Bankole. Did
no, sir. I think you were cut off for a moment. Please, can you repeat your answer or your take on that?
Enoch, did you hear the answer to my question? Or rather, my response to Mr. Bankole's question?
No, sir. Please, can you repeat it?
So the answer essentially is yes. There is a correlation. The higher the EQ of a child, the better their performance.
Thank you very much for your take on that. I would like to ask, sir, can emotional intelligence improve family relationship?
Yes, emotional intelligence can improve family relationships. And I'll give you simple examples rather than trying to explain how it works. A father or a mother that is more emotional intelligent will be more connected to their children, and so their children can speak to them more and not have to speak to people on the outside. Emotional intelligence would also help many people to understand why domestic violence is wrong. For instance, domestic violence is not just what is in the news today. Sometimes it's verbal, it's abusive, it's demeaning, it's undermining people. All of those things can be better off or can be totally removed from the family setting if everybody in the family is more emotionally intelligent. And people that are have emotional intelligence also learn to try to work things out together. So, for instance, I have an argument with my wife. Can we come back later on and discuss that argument or discuss what went wrong, why it went wrong, what you think, what I think, and then reach a compromise that can make us become better at what we do? So the truth is, people who have higher emotional intelligence have better relationships. I already mentioned social skills, and empathy has been a part of emotional intelligence. So families usually thrive better and do better when emotional intelligence is high within them. And a lot of the things we see in the world today that kids have to go through, abuse, domestic violence, are things that can be avoided if there's a higher level of emotional intelligence.
Okay, thank you, sir. When awareness is
You're
brought to
welcome.
an emotion, awareness is brought to your life, as said by Taya Mayer Robson. Let's move on to parents and emotional intelligence. Mr. Kuro,
Okay.
some of the challenges parents face is determining and managing the needs of their kids. So, what would you say kids of
Hmm.
nowadays need the most?
Apologies, Ramat. I didn't hear your question properly.
Okay. Some of the challenges parents face is determining and
Okay.
managing the needs of their kids. What would you say kids of
Okay.
nowadays need the most?
What do kids of nowadays need the most? Interesting question. You see, kids of nowadays need the same thing that kids in the past needed. Maybe give and take, technology being a bit of a change to it. Kids first need support. By definition, a child is someone who requires support. When kids are born, they require support to be able to feed, to sleep, to change, to do all of those things. As a child begins to grow, the level of support begins to change from just mere physical support to more emotional support. So the first thing kids need the world over is support. And that support cannot be only physical, like I just said, it must also have an emotional dimension to it. When kids have issues with their emotions, they're angry from school, they're sad from school, question what should the parents do is provide support, get them to express those feelings, get them to appreciate what those feelings are, and help them to channel those feelings properly or douse them, depending on the case. So the first thing kids need everywhere in the world is support. Everywhere in the world is very, very important. The other things, of course, are the things any human would need, but kids need the most. Apart from support, kids need care naturally. Kids need love and care. Very importantly, kids need to have role models because most kids learn by observation, not by what you teach them. It's easier to teach children generally in the world. I'm now a learning and development practitioner, and so I've understood what learning means a little more. Kids learn more by observation than they learn from what we say. So kids need role models, not only in the house, but outside of the house, in school, in church, at the mosque, in every sphere of life where they go around. The kids need role models. Kids need also to have parents who can help them deal with the outcomes of what they do. So when a child doesn't pass in school, what's your response to the child? So you came first. Why didn't you come? Or you came third. Why didn't you come first? Rather than finding out what led to that kind of a result. So those are the things the kid needs the most. There are many other things kids need. Kids need to play. Kids need to have the rights to a name. They need the rights to play, the right to express themselves. But the key ones start with support. Kids need support physically and emotionally. Kids need love and care. They need people to trust and they need role models. If we have those in society, kids will have a better foundation to build their characters and their emotional intelligence on.
Okay, thank you for your response, sir. More comments from the audience. Abiola Lamikora says, well done, Mr. Kuro, for the detailed responses. Thank you, ma. Hikma Alade says, well done, Ramat Alade. Thank you. Kozim Alade says, beautiful presentation. Keep it up, Ramat and Enoch. Thank you, sir. Patrick Oyedoyi says, well done, Mr. Kuro. I love all the examples used throughout. Your responses were brilliant, sir. So no one can develop emotional intelligence via conditioned reflex action as seen in the Lion's King illustration. Bravo.
Amen.
Though you are not yet a doctor, but since you aspire for it, I pray you receive it. Thanks, doctor. Udwa Ubong says,
Amen.
he asked a question, can people with no emotional intelligence become really intelligent with time? So do you mind answering that question?
Can people who have low emotional intelligence have higher emotional intelligence later? That's the interpretation of the question to me. Can someone be said to have low emotional intelligence now and then later become someone with higher emotional intelligence? The answer is yes. Case in point, somebody lives in a part of the world where If a child does something wrong, the child gets taken from his or her parents and goes to a correctional facility, and it stays away from their parents for some time. If that child leaves that space and comes back to their parents after being punished for what they did wrong, chances are that if they have the same chance to do the same thing again, they would avoid it. And avoiding something that is wrong is a sign of being more emotionally intelligent. The example I gave with Rafiki and Simba had become more emotionally intelligent. Emotional intelligence includes the fact that you respond appropriately to things around you. So if somebody had been to a school dinner, and during the school dinner, because he didn't know how to use crockery properly, he uses his hands to eat in front of everybody else. And they go, no, this is not right. And they give him the wrong kind of vibes. And he goes back home and learns to put the knife in the right hand and the fork in the left, because you need your stronger hand to cut and your weaker hand to hold. That's the reason why your knife is in the right and your fork is in the left. If he learns that before the next school dinner, he has displayed a sign of being more emotionally intelligent, because he has used his past experience to improve the person that he is. So the answer is yes. People can have low emotional intelligence, and over time, based on experience, based on training that they go through, you can go to attend emotional intelligence training that will point these things out to you more, and you can apply it to work, to business, to raising kids, to everything in life, even to being a student in school, and become more emotionally intelligent over time.
All right, sir. How do you think parents can help their children's emotional development, especially in dealing with anger, fear, and sadness?
Okay, how can parents help their kids deal with their emotions better, especially with regards to anger, sadness, and fear? It's in line with something I said earlier. When somebody experiences an emotion, irrespective of the circumstances or the situation around them at that time, after some time, the emotions will be doused or will reduce, and then thinking sets in. What the parent should do is, one, when a child is expressing an emotion, either by verbalizing it or by acting it out. We've seen kids who pick up a tab, for instance, out of annoyance and break their tab. This is the example I would like to share. Someone has a tab, a kid has a tab. The kid gets angry because the parent says you cannot use your tab after 9 p.m. or you cannot watch a particular cartoon strip, or you cannot do something or play with your friends. The kid gets angry, which means the message goes to the kid's brain. It triggers anger, and the kid reacts out of anger and probably breaks the tab. What the parent should do, most parents will go ahead and smack the kid. Why would you break your tab? It costs money to fix it, and they shout and all that. I'm not saying it is completely wrong to do that, though I don't like to smack kids. I'd rather not. I think it's easier to communicate to kids. What I would advise the parent to do is this: whatever you do, at the end of the day, your kid needs to be clear about the consequences of their actions. So you were angry, you broke your tab. Your tab requires money to be fixed. So you will not have a tab for the next 2 weeks to play with or to learn from, because you broke the tab. Every time you react based on your emotions, this is a possible outcome of it. So do not let this happen again. If I had a kid if my kid had a piggy bank, I would take money from that piggy bank to fix the tab. So the child sees that there are consequences to actions. And the more they see those consequences to actions, the more they learn to note, to guide the actions aright. So parents need to be there when the child, when something happens to the child, the parent needs to be there first. The parent needs to be there when the child is expressing his or her emotions, so they can help them manage it and guide them through it. And has to be there when the emotions have blown over, to make them understand the consequences of those emotions. So it may not even be an emotion like anger, but fear. So a child sees someone and says, "Oh, Juju Kalaba," like we like to say in Nigeria, and runs away from something they are afraid of. If you get the child to understand that it is a man wearing a mask and not a spirit, over time the child begins to appreciate it. Get the child to pull the nose of the mask, and then the fear is lost. Parents can do that, because parents are guardians to kids all over the world. I think that's something that parents should pay attention to. Be there when things are happening to them. Whether you are there or not, when kids are expressing those emotions, be there with them, show them the perceptions, the different dimensions to the emotion, what the emotion means, whether expressing it is right or wrong, And then at the end of that expression of their emotion, you need to understand the consequences of their actions. Sometimes what we call consequences are even positive. So somebody did something for you, you were happy with the person, another child, then you give the child one of your two toffees. The parent needs to appreciate that gesture and tie it to an emotion so they learn from it. Still tying to support again, but parents need to be there all through.
Thank you very much for your response, sir. Um,
You're welcome, Enoch.
Hikma Alade says, bravo to CKA students and teachers. Thank you very much. And Mr. Ileri Ayotim Tope asks a question. How do you control your emotions when working under duress?
Yes, you can.
Yes, how do you go
The
about that?
question again is fantastic. Can you control your emotions when working under duress? Yes, you can. You can control your emotions, whatever the case. I said this earlier, so remember this. Life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you deal with it. So let's paint the scenario. You have a supervisor or a boss or a line manager who's putting you under duress, meaning they're putting you under pressure and bringing stress your way, making your work look like your work is not worth what you are delivering, and all of those things put together. How do you control your emotions? Think. Assuming that your boss slapped you in the face. Worst case scenario with working under pressure is when your boss becomes physical with you. They ask you to go home, they ask you to leave the job. Those are things that could happen. Your boss becomes physical with you and slaps you in the face. Very clear example. What can you do? Now, the journey is that this pain on your face, right? The pain on your face will be taken in as a message by your skin, the skin on your face. It goes to your central nervous system and goes to um your the first level of your brain, which in this case is your instinctive brain or your survival brain. At that point, your brain asks the same question I said it asked before. Is this a life or death situation? Is it life or death when your boss and other people are in the same room and your boss slaps you? Most likely it is not. Because even if the issue goes beyond that level and you guys end up in fisticuffs, people will separate the two of you, pull the two of you apart and not let it go. So you probably won't die from your boss slapping you in the face. That same message then moves another step up to your emotional brain and triggers, for most people, it triggers anger. For some, it may trigger fear. For some, it's shock. But it triggers an emotion in the person, right? Now, when it triggers the emotion, some people may react immediately, not respond, react immediately by slapping their boss in return. Some even give him double portion of what he did to them. But you see, if the person can get that message to go to his thinking brain first, and he sees school fees, house rent, I'll be out of a job, it's a pandemic, there's no work out there, all of those things flash in front of him, the person will not respond the same way to his boss. In fact, some people will say, boss, could you please also hit me on this side so that I could balance myself properly and the rest? The truth is, the more we think, the more we can control our emotions. A lot of it is the fact that thinking happens all the way up here and emotions are somewhere in the middle. So we can't control our emotions when working under duress. If your boss, okay, even if it's not at work, if somebody pointed a gun to a parent and said, give me your money, no matter how angry you get, do you shout at the person? Do you insult the person? Once you see the gun and it looks like a real gun that has bullets, you would naturally behave yourself and control that anger that was triggered in you. They may leave and then you can begin to shout, how dare you? What do you mean? But they've gone. You control the emotion in their presence. So you can. It takes learning first. If you haven't before, please go and attend an emotional intelligence session one day and let them break it down to you some more. If you have learned it or you now understand it, begin to play out those things in your head before they happen and begin to
It looks like we have lost our host for now. We'll be taking some more comments. Mm, A few people have dropped some questions. Mrs. Hikima Alade says, bravo to CK students and teachers.
Yes, I'm back here.
Please continue from where you stopped.
Sorry, what did you say, Enoch?
Please can you continue from where you stopped?
Okay, so the question before was, how do you control your emotions when working under duress? Use thinking. The more you can think about the outcome of your actions and the things you say and do, the more you can control your emotions. If anybody has the outcome of your actions clear in their mind repeatedly, you would act differently. And I gave the example of somebody who works under a boss who slaps the person, and the person thinks about school fees and house rent and the fact that if I retaliate, it may become me against my boss, and I may be reprimanded. I could be asked to go home. I don't want to lose my job. You naturally would behave differently compared to if you didn't think about it, or somebody pointed a gun at you and asked that you hand them your money. You could get angry. It could trigger an emotion in you of anger, but you don't respond to them based on your anger because you know what the outcome could be. So it's thinking. How to control your emotions is to think more. The more you allow thinking to come into the conversation, the more you can control your emotions. And thinking happens all the way up here. Thank you for that question, Temitokwe Ileri Ayo.
Okay, thank you, sir, for your response. Ladies and gentlemen, you all agree with me that the discussion has both been insightful and expository. I have learned so much this evening, and I believe you all have learned too. I would like to thank our guest, Mr. Kuro John Ngogo, for gracing us with his presence today. Thank you, sir. You
Thank you
have
very
really
much.
been a source of inspiration to us. Also, I appreciate those that hooked up on this webcast for your comments and questions. Just to quickly remind you that admission is still ongoing at City of Knowledge Academy. For further inquiries, visit our website www.ckaintl.com. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can also call any of the numbers scrolling on the screen. At City of Knowledge Academy, we understand the needs of parents as well as the needs of every child, and we have the capacity, resources, and experience to meet those needs and expectations. To round off, I would like to remind you all that coronavirus is real, and always wash your hands with either soap and water or alcohol-based sanitizer. Use face mask whenever you go out and stay at home if you don't have anything to do outside. Good night and stay safe. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you